The mechanic fixes single dad's car for free, not realizing the man would return with life-changing news. Jack Murphy wiped the grease from his weathered hands, the stubborn black stains refusing to fully surrender to the harsh orange soap. 23 years under the hoods of broken vehicles had permanently etched the scent of motor oil into his skin. The small auto repair shop tucked away on the corner of Maple and Pine had been his sanctuary since the divorce 5 years ago. A place where broken things made sense, where problems had solutions, where the rules of engagement were clear and familiar. The late October evening cast long shadows through the garage's open bay doors. Most of the staff had already gone home, leaving Jack alone with the comforting symphony of the old radio crackling out forgotten blues songs. He glanced at the battered wall clock, 7:38 p.m. He should have closed almost 2 hours ago, but the 2006 Honda Civic in Bay 3 had presented a puzzle he couldn't walk away from. The bell above the office door chimed, startling him. "Sorry, we're closed," Jack called out automatically, not bothering to look up from the timing belt he was examining. "Please," a voice responded, tinged with quiet desperation. "I know it's late, but I don't know what else to do." Something in the man's tone made Jack pause. He straightened slowly, his lower back protesting after hours bent over engines. In the doorway stood a man about his age, mid-40s maybe, with dark circles under anxious eyes and a child's backpack clutched awkwardly in one hand. His button-down shirt was wrinkled but clean, his slacks clearly from a day at an office job. "My car just died completely. Right across the street," the man explained, gesturing vaguely toward the intersection. "I tried calling for a tow, but the earliest they can come is tomorrow afternoon, and I need to get my daughter to her doctor's appointment first thing in the morning. It's important." Jack's first instinct was to turn him away. He was tired. The week had been long. His own problems, the stack of unpaid bills in his desk drawer, the letter from his ex-wife's lawyer, the leaking roof in his apartment, were enough without taking on a stranger's troubles. But there was something in the man's eyes. Not just worry, but the particular brand of exhaustion Jack recognized from his own mirror. The look of someone carrying too much for too long. "Where is she? Your daughter?" Jack asked, already reaching for the shop's tow rope. "In the car. She's 7. Her name is Emma." The relief in the man's voice was palpable. "I'm Daniel, by the way." "Daniel Foster." Jack nodded. "Jack Murphy. Let's take a look at your car." 20 minutes later, Daniel's Subaru Outback sat in Bay 2. Emma, a small girl with her father's eyes and a plastic medical bracelet on her wrist, had fallen asleep on the worn waiting room couch, her father's jacket draped over her shoulders. "Alternator's shot," Jack announced, wiping his hands on a rag as he entered the office. "And your timing belt's on its last legs too." Daniel's face fell. "How much?" Jack watched as the man unconsciously reached for his wallet, his fingers fidgeting with what looked like a medical insurance card tucked alongside his driver's license. "How important is this appointment tomorrow?" Daniel met his eyes. It's a follow-up. Emma has leukemia. She's responding well to treatment, but these checkups are crucial." Jack felt something shift in his chest. A door opening to a room he'd kept locked for years. The image of another little girl flashed through his mind. Samantha, his daughter, 3,000 miles away with her mother and new stepfather. The monthly phone calls that grew increasingly shorter. The promised visits that never materialized. "I can have it ready by morning," Jack heard himself say. "First thing, I don't know how to thank you, whatever the cost." "Don't worry about that now," Jack cut him off, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just need to get your girl to her appointment, right?" After Daniel and Emma left in a rideshare, Jack worked through the night. The familiar rhythm of tools against metal, the methodical troubleshooting, the gratifying progression from broken to fixed. This was where Jack found his peace. By 5:30 a.m., the Subaru was purring like it hadn't in years. He'd replaced the alternator, installed a new timing belt, topped off all the fluids, and even fixed the passenger window that had been stuck halfway down. When Daniel arrived at 6:45 a.m., his face registered shock at the sight of his car already waiting in the parking lot. "I can't possibly afford all this," he said after Jack explained everything he'd done. Jack shrugged, handing over the keys. "Consider it paid in full." "But why? You don't even know us." The question hung in the air between them. Jack wasn't sure he could explain it himself. How the sight of that sleeping child had awakened something dormant inside him. How fixing this one car for this one family felt like the first right thing he'd done in years. "Just get her to that appointment," Jack said finally. "That's payment enough." Daniel's eyes glistened. He extended his hand, and when Jack took it, Daniel clasped it between both of his own, a gesture so sincere that Jack had to look away. "People like you restore my faith," Daniel said quietly. "Thank you." Jack watched them drive away, Emma's small hand waving from the passenger window. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the heavy weight in his chest felt a fraction lighter. 3 weeks passed, each day bleeding into the next with the same monotonous rhythm that had defined Jack's life for years. Fix cars, pay bills, eat takeout, sleep, repeat. The brief warmth he'd felt from helping Daniel and Emma had faded, replaced once again by the familiar numbness. The letter from his ex-wife's lawyer remained unopened on his kitchen counter. He knew what it contained. Another reduction in his visitation rights. Another legal formality to acknowledge that his role in his daughter's life was diminishing into nothing. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the bell above the shop door rang again. Jack glanced up from an invoice, surprise registering when he recognized Daniel Foster standing in the doorway, this time without Emma. "Mr. Foster." Jack nodded, suddenly self-conscious of the grease under his fingernails and the coffee stain on his shirt. "Please, it's Daniel." The man smiled, approaching the counter. "I hope I'm not interrupting. No more car trouble, I hope." "The car's running better than ever," Daniel assured him. "I actually came for another reason." He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted to thank you properly for what you did. I know you said not to worry about payment, but I can't just let it go. What you did meant everything to us that day." Jack shook his head. "Really, it's fine. I'm not here with money." Daniel interrupted gently. "I'm here with an offer, or rather a question." Jack raised an eyebrow. "I'm a recruitment specialist for Heartland Memorial Hospital," Daniel explained. "We've been looking for someone to head up our transportation maintenance department for months. It would mean overseeing the fleet of ambulances, transport vehicles, and staff cars. The previous manager retired, and we've been struggling to find someone with both the technical skills and the right heart for the job." Jack stared at him blankly. "And you're telling me this because I'd like you to consider applying for the position," Daniel said simply. "After what you did for Emma and me, I started thinking about the kind of person who would work through the night to help a stranger. That's exactly the kind of dedication our hospital needs." A startled laugh escaped Jack's lips. "I fix cars in a small garage. I don't have a college degree. I've never managed anything bigger than this place. You have 20+ years of experience with vehicles. You clearly know how to solve problems under pressure, and you've demonstrated the kind of compassion that aligns perfectly with our mission." Daniel placed a business card on the counter. "The salary is significantly more than I imagine you're making now. Full benefits, regular hours for the most part." Jack picked up the card, turning it over in his hands. The idea was absurd. He wasn't qualified. He wasn't the type of person who worked in hospitals, wearing clean clothes and talking to important people. He was just Jack, the mechanic, the ex-husband, the absent father. "Just think about it," Daniel urged. "That's all I'm asking." After Daniel left, Jack tried to return to work, but his concentration was shot. He found himself staring at the business card, running his thumb over the embossed letters of the hospital logo. That night, for the first time in years, he called his daughter. "Dad?" Samantha sounded surprised to hear from him outside their scheduled monthly call. "Hey, Sammy," he said, the childhood nickname feeling foreign on his tongue. She was 16 now, hardly the little girl who used to sit on his workbench, handing him tools and asking endless questions about engines. "Is everything okay?" she asked cautiously. "Yeah, everything's fine. He paused, unsure how to continue. "Something happened and I wanted to tell you about it." To his surprise, she listened. Really listened. And when he finished explaining about Daniel's job offer and his uncertainty, she was quiet for a moment. "I think you should do it, Dad," she finally said. "You've always been good at fixing things. Maybe this is a chance to fix more than just cars." Her words stayed with him long after they hung up. The next morning, he called the number on Daniel's card. The interview process was the most nerve-wracking experience of Jack's life. He bought his first new shirt in 3 years. He printed his resume on fancy paper at the copy shop. He practiced answers to imagined questions in his bathroom mirror. When he finally sat across from the hospital's HR director and the head of operations, he felt like an imposter. But then Daniel walked in, nodding encouragingly, and Jack found himself talking about the one thing he knew better than anything: how to keep vehicles running when lives depended on them. "An ambulance isn't just transportation," he heard himself saying. "It's a promise that help won't be delayed because of mechanical failure. That's a promise I know how to keep." 2 weeks later, Jack Murphy accepted the position of Transportation Maintenance Manager at Heartland Memorial Hospital. The transition wasn't easy. The learning curve was steep. There were policies to memorize, staff to manage, budgets to understand. Some days Jack felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the change, by the fluorescent lights and computer systems and meetings that now structured his days instead of the familiar rhythm of wrenches and engines. But there were other moments, watching paramedics rush a patient from a perfectly maintained ambulance, knowing that precious minutes weren't lost to mechanical issues, seeing the gratitude in a family's eyes when the transport van arrived on time to take their elderly mother to her cancer treatment, hearing the hospital director praise his department's perfect safety record, that made Jack realize he had found something he never knew he was missing: purpose. Daniel became more than just the man who had offered Jack a job. Their shared experiences as single fathers, Daniel through his wife's death from cancer 3 years prior, Jack through divorce, formed the foundation of a friendship that grew stronger with each passing month. It was Daniel who encouraged Jack to take the bold step of asking his ex-wife for a chance to rebuild his relationship with Samantha. It was Jack who helped Daniel navigate Emma's final rounds of treatment and the terrifying weeks of waiting for test results. And it was Emma, now 8 and in remission, who drew a crayon picture of Jack standing beside an ambulance with the words "My Hero" written in purple letters across the top, a picture Jack framed and hung in his office. 6 months into his new job, Jack received a text message from Samantha that made his heart stop. "Dad, can I come stay with you for spring break?" The week of Samantha's visit coincided with Emma's final checkup, the appointment that would officially declare her cancer-free if all went well. Daniel had been a nervous wreck for days leading up to it. "You'll come with us, right?" Daniel had asked Jack the evening before. They were sitting on Daniel's back porch, watching Emma play with her new puppy in the yard, a celebration gift Jack had helped pick out in anticipation of the good news they all expected. "I don't know." Jack hesitated. "Sammy's arriving that morning. It's the first time I've seen her in almost 2 years." "Bring her along," Daniel suggested. "Emma would love to meet her, and afterward we're having a small party here. Nothing fancy, just a few people from the hospital and Emma's favorite teacher." So it was that Jack found himself standing in the hospital waiting room, his teenage daughter beside him, while Daniel and Emma met with the oncologist. Samantha, tall and poised with her mother's features but Jack's quiet intensity, had been surprisingly open to coming along after Jack explained the situation. "Emma sounds brave," she'd said during the car ride. "I'd like to meet her." Jack glanced at his daughter now, struck by how grown up she looked and how little he knew about her life. There was an ocean of unspoken words between them, years of missed moments and faded connections. But she was here. She had chosen to come. That had to mean something. The door to the consultation room opened, and Emma burst out, her face radiant. "I'm all better," she announced to the entire waiting room. "The doctor said the cancer is gone." Daniel followed more slowly, his eyes red-rimmed but his smile wide. When he saw Jack, he crossed the room in a few quick strides and enveloped him in a bear hug. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Jack felt his own eyes grow damp. "I didn't do anything. The doctors, you did everything," Daniel insisted, pulling back to look at Jack directly. "If you hadn't fixed our car that night, if you hadn't cared enough to help a stranger, who knows if we would have made it to all these appointments on time? Who knows if I would have had the strength to keep going without your friendship this past year?" Emma tugged at Jack's hand. "Is this your daughter?" she asked, looking up at Samantha with undisguised curiosity. "Yes." Jack nodded, his chest tight with emotion. "This is Samantha." "You look like your dad," Emma declared. "He saved my life, you know." Samantha's eyes met Jack's, something new and wondering in their depths. "Yeah," she said softly. "I'm starting to see that he's good at that." The party at Daniel's house that evening was filled with laughter and stories. Jack watched in amazement as Samantha joined Emma in playing with the puppy, the two of them forming an instant connection despite their age difference. He observed Daniel moving among his guests with a lightness that had been absent when they first met. The shadow of fear finally lifted from his shoulders, and Jack felt something unfamiliar expanding in his own chest. A sense of belonging, of being exactly where he was meant to be. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Jack found himself alone with Daniel in the kitchen, helping to clean up. "I have something for you," Daniel said, reaching into a drawer. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Jack. "I've been saving this for the right moment." Jack opened it to find a formal letter from the hospital board, recognizing his department's contributions to patient care and safety. At the bottom was a handwritten note from the hospital director. "Jack, Your work saves lives every day. We're lucky to have found you. They don't even know the half of it, Daniel said quietly. Jack looked at him questioningly. They don't know that by helping one little girl get to her appointments, you set in motion a chain of events that's touched countless lives. Daniel gestured toward the living room, where Emma and Samantha were still playing with the puppy. They don't know that you restored a father's faith when he was at his lowest. They don't know that every ambulance you've maintained has carried someone's loved one to safety. Jack swallowed hard against the lump forming in his throat. I was just fixing a car. Daniel shook his head. Number Redzone. You were fixing a family. And in the process, it seems you might have fixed your own. Through the doorway, Jack caught Samantha's eye. She smiled at him. A real smile. Not the polite version he'd grown accustomed to during their brief, awkward visits over the years. In that smile, he saw the possibility of redemption, of second chances, of healing old wounds. And maybe you're right, Jack admitted. That night, after driving back to his apartment with Samantha, an apartment he had recently upgraded to include a proper second bedroom for potential visits, Jack found himself unable to sleep. He sat in his small living room, marveling at how completely his life had transformed in less than a year. From the lonely mechanic working late nights in an empty garage to the man he was becoming, respected at work, reconnecting with his daughter, part of Emma and Daniel's extended family, surrounded by people who valued not just his skills, but his humanity. All because he had chosen, on one ordinary evening, to help a desperate father and his sick daughter. All because a broken car had led to mended lives. Jack Murphy, the mechanic who had fixed a single dad's car for free, never could have imagined that the man would return with news that would change his life forever. But in the quiet of this night, with his daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, and the knowledge of Emma's clean bill of health warming his heart, Jack understood the profound truth that had been revealed to him. Sometimes the things we fix end up fixing us in return. The next morning, Jack woke to the sound of Samantha making coffee in the kitchen. For a disoriented moment, he thought he was dreaming. This ordinary domestic sound had been absent from his life for so long. "Dad," she called out, "how do you like your eggs now?" The simple question carried the weight of all their lost years. She didn't know how he liked his eggs anymore. She was asking to learn him again. "Over easy," he answered, his voice rough with sleep and emotion. "Same as always." As he joined her in the kitchen, watching her confident movements as she prepared their breakfast, Jack realized that Daniel's job offer hadn't been the life-changing news that had truly transformed him. The real miracle had been learning that kindness creates ripples, that broken things, cars, relationships, hearts, can be fixed with patience and care, and that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. And that perhaps was the most life-changing news of all.